Welcome on in. Welcome. Come in, brave heroes. Welcome home. Pull yourself up a coffee, have a coffee, and make yourself coffeeable. This is the official return of the AshQuest BWODECast. I'm Ash, and this is AshQuest, and the BWODECast is a long-form podcast-style video series focused on dungeon crawlers, such as HeroQuest. It is named in honor of HeroQuest through in joke based on a commercial from the 90s for the game, late 80s, and all things dungeon crawler adjacent. There's a lot of stuff to nerd out about in the world today, but we'll keep it within the confines of what's really relevant here. And that wall there is what's relevant here, as well as the stuff that's slightly beyond, but looks very similar to what's there. All of that thick layers of insulation that I have right there. It's structural integrity. That's the shelves holding up the ceiling. And then in between is the insulation that keeps my room warm in the harsh winter climate in the Midwest. Anyways, welcome back. Welcome back. I raise my glass and toast to you and welcome, and we'll have some sips of coffee. So, recently, I asked a question to my community. I asked a strange request, really, to answer two questions, and I have those in front of me. And if you didn't see them, it's because occasionally I will submit posts to the channel, not just videos, but also posts. So I have these community posts that you can actually respond to, and I don't know how visible they are. I don't know how many people watch this channel on a TV where I've never seen posts appear. I don't think YouTube has a way for those to be displayed versus on their phone or PC. I don't know how many people get like notifications of posts. I don't know how all of that works on the user experience side. And even if I did have an idea on this side as the creator, I would really be more interested in you guys' thoughts on how you see that stuff versus what I think you're going to see on this end and the numbers and things that YouTube shows me. I would rather hear your thoughts and how that user experience is going. But I do want to really quickly segue off for just a brief second and say, while I call this a podcast, last year it did have episodes that were linked to RSS feeds. I was able to get it up on platforms like Apple, Spotify, and all that. There's AshQuest almost everywhere for the duration that I was doing that. But I stepped away from it because it's not a profitable series. It's something that I want to do. I really enjoy our casual chats. I love the live streams, probably more than anything in that regard. But this specific opportunity that I want to take to talk about something focused is not super popular. And that could change in the future, and it would be awesome if it did. But it's not. So it doesn't justify the cost of having the RSS feeds going to different places. And it's really cool to have that stuff out there because I have had requests from people say, hey, can you get this on Spotify? That is so cool to hear. Just in general, no matter what. That's so cool. You want to hear me on Spotify? Okay. And there's some stuff, I think, on Spotify. But I haven't turned that back on since turning it off. And I won't probably until it makes sense to do so. So I do apologize for that. And this will be the first, last, and only time I bring it up, I think, because I don't want to waste too much time repeating myself. This series is intended to be enjoyed while you are in your car, truck, bicycle, EV, spaceship, going to work. And you could be listening while you're going to the International Space Station to work. I don't know. Okay, it's not beyond the realm of possibility. During your commute to and from work or school, and you can also listen to this while you're working. I mean, I don't advocate for behavior that would get you in trouble. What you do with your time is your business. Maybe you're having a really boring meeting. Just go ahead and just flip on over. Just listen. You never know. You look over at your boss, and your boss has got like a earbud in, and I make a joke, and you chuckle, and then you look at your boss to make sure your boss didn't notice you, but your boss is also chuckling. Both listening to the AshQuest BWODECast. But no, I wanted to talk about today the questions that I posed to my community. And those questions were, does HeroQuest need a FAQ? I lovingly call them facts. I don't know if anybody else does, but it's FAQ, frequently asked questions, some sort of official, centralized source of information for people who have general questions that have been known to be asked repeatedly throughout the years/decades about the game. There are a lot of unofficial facts out there. There have been facts on Yield In. There are people that have facts that have answers that are different from other facts because of their interpretation of the rules. There are folks who would point you in one direction versus another when it comes to FAQs. And some of these are rooted in general community agreement over rules that could technically be considered interpreted differently. Some of them are rooted in just total objective, absolute fact. Like if you come in and you're like, how many skulls does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Roll Tootsie Pop? That's in the rule book. That's on page 5, paragraph 6, subsection B. That's there. You go look at it. I'll wait so that you know I'm not lying. And people might ask that frequently because that is a stupid example. You're right. But there's definitely instances where people have questions that are in the rules. They're there. They just were missed for whatever reason. And that's fine because that's every game. And a good community knows how to point people in that direction gently so that they can get those answers and be one with the community and help the community answer further questions of that exact same type and nature. You know, train the soldiers to join your army, so to speak. The second part of my request was to answer the question, does HeroQuest need an errata? So the goblins, and you know who you are, getting really excited over that question, but an errata is, and I'm not going to use the Merriam-Webster dictionary definition, I'm just going to paraphrase here, it is a document released by an entity that corrects errors that were present in a previous body of work. So sometimes this errata will correct typos, sometimes it will replace whole words, sometimes it will rephrase things, sometimes it will make a rule overabundantly clear where it is super confusing or just absolutely incorrect due to its wording in the original body of work. Generally, errata are for board games. I say that, but they're probably like chiefly in college theses or scientific bodies of work. Like erratas are published to correct errors in very important documents, and I'm over here just like, it's for board games. Arguably, board games are more important than scientific bodies of work anyway. I'm going to use my favorite punching bag, Elden Ring, the board game, as an example because they released 2 pages of errata, 2 pages of corrections because they failed to do this right the first time. I'm sorry, I will rescind that comment. It's 1 page of errata and 1 page of frequently asked questions. This is official. This is from Steamforged Games. And when I ask, does HeroQuest need a frequently asked questions, does HeroQuest need an errata? This is kind of what I'm talking about. This is printed off, but it's available at the Steamforged Games website. Now, this is probably not as many frequently asked questions as what HeroQuest has. I don't think the size of this document necessarily means anything bad or good. Maybe if it's really, really big, that means the rules just aren't clear enough, because people shouldn't have that many questions all the time, right? And then this document, this errata, the smaller this is, the better, but I mean, it should be non-existent, or it should just have one thing. Let me read off to you what some of the errata for Elden Ring, the board game is. General, category general, section encounter books. Correct each instance of critical to critical in each instance it appears in an encounter book. The way you worded your errata is even funky. But yeah, it's not really correcting anything. It's just saying, hey, if you read critical, what we meant to say is critical. That's what was meant to be there. So I have vitriol towards this game that I paid so much money for. I'm sorry. So back to HeroQuest. I'd like to go over the comments that were left on this post. And I would also like to say, I don't know if everybody sees these posts. I don't know what my ratio of viewers that watch my videos on a TV is versus my ratio of viewers that watch on a phone. I guess that is in my analytics. I can look at that, but I don't think that I've ever seen a post on any YouTube channel that I've watched on my TV. So I'm not sure if different makes and models of TV provide you different access to different areas of YouTube than do others. So for that, I'm kind of just wondering, how did you come across that post? And is there a way that I can be a bit more visible about those posts? Because sometimes I will put a post up and I will ask you a question in advance of a video like this. So if you'd like to be considered for having attention called to your question in a future BWODECast, do make sure you peek at the channel on YouTube on your phone or on your desktop, laptop browser, whatever the case may be. You might see stuff that you can't see if you're watching on a TV. But do let me know how you came across the post, because I know YouTube can tell me so much, but I'm really more interested in like the real world analytics of what you guys are actually seeing. So anyways, I'm going to address each one of these questions. This is the good faith attempt that I promised in response to you guys providing answers to the questions I asked in my request. We're going to go in order of oldest first. So without further ado, let us begin. Mr. Lucky NL says, HeroQuest needs more HeroQuest. Also, HeroQuest needs to go back to the old world. Avalon Hill, Hasbro, and Games Workshop need to team up and need to make Warhammer Quest X HeroQuest. If they like money, this needs to happen. I want to point out several things about this comment. First of all, it doesn't have a whole lot to do with errata and facts, but I could construe it as it's just a yes to both, because both of those things would be HeroQuest, and any addition to official content would be welcome, no matter the form it takes or the nature by which we get it. So I can definitely see that. Also, HeroQuest needs to go back to the old world. I have a whole video on whether or not it ever was in the old world, and I still hold true to those convictions. So if you'd like to see that, I may remember to put that in the description or not. Probably, I don't know, maybe. But it's out there. Avalon Hill, Hasbro, and Games Workshop working together. Notice he did not say the Games Workshop version of HeroQuest needing a reprint. I've seen that sentiment before. Notice he did not say like a contemporary Games Workshop version of HeroQuest. I think I've seen that sentiment before, or at least it's crossed my mind. He said Warhammer Quest X HeroQuest specifically. Think about that. That seems a lot more valid. That seems very interesting. But yes, and if they like money, it would cost money. There's no doubt about that. It would be a price tag. But the possibility of that happening and the likelihood of it happening are probably far beyond the topic of this video. So we will move on. But thank you, Mr. Lucky NL, for your comment. Very, very thought-provoking. Philip Denick 8509 says some people will only accept an official resolution to a situation. For those people, yes, HeroQuest should have these things. The rest of us wouldn't know, even if it did, because we've already got our answers. Yes, this is true. Some people will only accept what is official. I don't think that there is a large group of people who have said, I can't play this anymore. We have to stop. We are soft locked in the rules of the game because we don't have an answer. I think most people, even if they are pretty demanding of an official response, are still playing. They're just doing what everybody else has done, and that is interpret an answer and create something. We're definitely going to have varying levels of how comfortable we are with that. And I think maybe some of that has to do with, well, if you interpret the rule this way, then that's going to give the heroes an advantage. And it might not be a significant advantage, or it might be quite the advantage. But if you interpret it this way, the advantage goes to Zargon. So which way do we want to go? Which way is more scalable? And that question is not something you can answer when you're playing the first few games of HeroQuest or the first entire campaign even. There's another part of me that thinks that people really need those answers, because while they can judge whatever they like as Zargon, they don't want to maybe play a hero in somebody else's Zargon game only to feel like the rule is being interpreted incorrectly. And I use quote bunny earmarks on that because I think that there are a few rules in HeroQuest. I don't think there are a lot. I think there are a few in the rule book that are somewhat vague. And I think that there are a few different descriptions on cards, such as ability cards and spell cards, that are somewhat vague because they are left open to interpretation. And I don't necessarily think that that was the intention. I think the rules as written were, this is how it works. And there just wasn't enough thought put into the different ways it could be interpreted. And to be completely honest with you, I think that there are situations, while I would totally want to avoid what Elden Ring does, I think there are situations where you can't possibly answer what a given quest book author is going to do. And so these two things aren't always going to mesh perfectly like gears in a fine-tuned machine. Sometimes you're going to have a very clear vision on how your rule set's going to work, and a quest book author is going to have a very clear vision on how their interpretation of those rules are and how their quest should be played. And now you've got a little bit of a kink in the gears. You've got a little bit of if you're doing that, then what I have written could definitely be taken to mean this. I didn't think that far ahead because I didn't think of that exception that you were going to create by writing that scenario. And this is where we kind of get into the scale of the frequently asked questions and the scale of the errata document and why that would be quite the administrative effort. But we'll save that for a little bit later in the video. Thank you, Philip, for your comment. Sack of Ham says, I'd like to see a fact, but with nothing but wrong answers. So what kind of wrong answers are we talking about here? Can I cast courage on a hero before they enter a room, and will the effect last because of the way the card is worded? The answer to that is, if the goats are 3 or less in the room, if there are any goats in line of sight. What if the fact had nothing but wrong questions? Did you think about that? One of the questions is, how many spaces can I toss the dwarf? So your Zargon, your new one, is frantically looking through the rule book, like, where's that mentioned? You can toss the other heroes? And the answer to that is like redacted, because no dwarf wants anybody to know publicly that they can be tossed. Thank you for your answer. Sal Hernandez 8286 says, errata kind of makes sense. They need to make a village board or tiles. I will accept that this is two separate statements, and they don't have anything to do with each other, because a village board or tiles is not going to solve our problems. Or will it? Yes, I can see it now. With a village board, there's no question. Village tiles, everything is answered. I'm kidding. I would rather the extra comments be added in here while people have the opportunity versus not, because it's more to think on, more to celebrate, more involvement, more interaction. I like to ribbit a little bit, but yeah, this is fine. I like to ribbit. I'm a frog now. I'm a frog. I'm the frogman. Errata kind of makes sense is basically the takeaway here, but yeah, we need that village board. I would love a village board. Many people would. Thank you for your answer. Zarostra74 says, I think that after all expansions, it needs a new rules book. Joel Lallier says, yes and yes, both, because the original rules have numerous ambiguities. I enjoy the game immensely, but I resist being blind to its flaws. Thank you both for your comments. Dan O'Hara 4570 says, do more arena battles? Do more. What does this mean? That's the gameplay mode from Against the Ogre Horde. You want me to do more arena battles, like on the channel? Are you frequently asking a question to me? You think the game needs more arena battles? Do you want to see the arena battles reconstrued and reappear in a future expansion? I don't think that that's necessarily a bad idea, as in introducing that game mode in a future core set. That's how I would do that. We'll talk about that a little bit too, actually. That's a topic we can scale up. Thank you for your answer. Greg Weather Up 9596 says, first thought is no. I like HeroQuest because it is, and I say it often, my favorite simple board game, and a game so simple shouldn't need a FAQ errata. But then I think of more and more examples where something like that could be useful. Line of sight rules, i.e. errata of the incorrect diagram, which was copied uncorrected from the old rules into the new. I don't actually know what this means. You're talking about the line of sight diagram? What is incorrect about it? I actually have no idea, because it's clear as a bell to me, but I don't know why it could be construed as incorrect. So in good faith, I ask you, what is meant by that? Tell me. I would love to know what is perceived as incorrect about that. Quest order between expansions, FAQ. compiling the later added rules like passing items or administering potions to others into the base set, errata, a clarification on how to handle treasure cards, fac. The negative ones say return to bottom of deck, but if you are truly supposed to shuffle the deck before each draw, why bother putting it on the bottom? Why not just return the card to the top of the deck and reshuffle it then and there? I never played with the shuffle time each time bit. I actually really appreciate the different ways that this post puts all of these things into categories and gives everything a context. That's smart. We go as far as to say, this is what I would like to see, and this is where I think it makes more sense to put it. Please do tell me about that line of sight diagram, though. Thank you for your comment, Greg Weather. 46 and 2 says, I think the community has done a good job of answering questions and providing information to those that seek it. However, as far as Avalon Hill goes, it would definitely be nice if they had an official FAQ and errata published. But as far as it being a need, no. So many people play HeroQuest outside of the rules or with their own spin on things anyway that I don't see it as a need. Thank you for your answer. LS says, first instinct is no and no, as we didn't need them 30 years ago and came up with a solution on the spot as Morcar/Zargon during a quest. However, Avalon Hill produced some typos /mistakes/errors /misprints on cards and in quest books over the years, so I would welcome an official errata after all expansions have been released, like Dwarf, Wizard, and Advanced Quest missing. Finally, somebody brave enough to step up and agree with me about the Dwarf and Wizard quest packs being missing, as well as the Advanced Quest. Thank you for your comment. MadMC 2012. ADV says, I think it would be great if it was all cleaned up for sure. And Amia the Small says, FAQ is probably not needed, but there are obviously some places where errata is required. Thank you both for your comments. By the way, if I don't have like a specific customized response to that specific post, it's not that I'm ignoring it or disagreeing with it. It's just, okay, I don't want to either repeat myself or we'll talk a little bit more about those points coming up, or it is something that I've already kind of responded to. And sometimes I just don't have anything to say. Liminal Sub says, an FAQ on HeroQuest is difficult because of the multiple iterations of the game and rules that have been released across different countries and versions, even differences between V2021 and First Light. But I think there is value for newer casual players to have one that reflects the most current rule set, and the errata helps me to know what the designer intended, even if I choose not to play that way. Cough, cough, multi-attacks. It helps to know what the rules are before you break them. For those who misinterpret the rules or unintentionally adopt rules across different versions, like playing an old UK quest with current global rules, it can lead to a bad play experience. Thank you for your comment. And Account 316 says, I think it could use those, but the real problem is with the quest book design and layout for every quest. I just started playing HeroQuest First Light with my kids. I played the original as a child. There is something with how the text is formatted and written that causes the brain to overthink everything. I think they should work on a quest book redesign. I think they should also make the rulebook a one-page card stock sheet. It would save money, and all it needs to be a slightly more developed version of the turn information and fact cards that come with the game. The key has always been simplification. If they introduce even more paper or documentation, people will tune out. The best thing about HeroQuest is its simplicity. Thank you for your comment. Christopher Scott 7416 says, I think a simple fact would be fine. We are often answering the same questions like quest order, keeping parties between expansions, where to find homebrew stuff, etc. I'm not sure if it would stop people from asking those questions, though. The errata is always nice because sometimes there are actual problems with quests or text. The biggest issues I run into with errata is finding it when I need it. These are probably the most important points, and I don't want to forget any particular part, so I want to go ahead and talk about these really quick. A frequently asked questions document would not stop people from asking those questions. A frequently asked questions document exists because people continue to ask those questions. A FAQ is really most useful as a centralized document that can be used as a resource when those questions are asked. So if you're actually playing the game and you happen to have the FAQ handy because maybe it was included in the box, then that is the best place for it, and that is the best use case for your FAQ to exist. Because people are still going to ask. They're going to ask everything. Honestly, the rulebook is already a frequently asked questions document in and of itself, because if you have a question about how something works, this exists for you to find that answer. But we are also talking about questions that aren't immediately clear from the answers in that rulebook, or questions that aren't answered at all by the rulebook. Perhaps they are quest or card exclusive, and the quest and the card don't have clarifications. The second point there, the errata is always nice because there are actual problems with quest or text, which is what I was just talking about. The biggest issues I run into with errata is finding it when I need it. Now, that's the second problem with all of this. Where do you put the FAQ? Where do you put the errata? Do you just publish it online? And do you expect players to automatically know that there are going to be problems or questions with a game when they buy it? I was once asked, and I'm not throwing shade at all, I promise, but I was asked in my server, what do I do when I need to find errata for a board game that I just bought? And the context being, the necessity of it all and where you'd like to see it. And would you like to see it at all? Kind of the same thing as what this set of questions is asking that we're going over now. And my answer was, well, when I buy a game, I don't expect it to be broke enough to need to go find these resources. When you buy a game, everything should be right there. And there shouldn't be any extraneous document that has any authority on what's in that box. I personally apply the death of the author rule to it. It's not something I'm super fond of doing, but when it comes to board games, that's kind of what I think should be done, because I don't think that a game should be released unless its contents are complete. I am of a shared viewpoint that if a game is broken, it's not a player's job to fix it. That being said, if you really want to play it, you'll fix it as much as you want to, but the onus is not on you to fix it. So if we're talking about what do I do when I get a game, how am I going to know if a rule is wrong? I'm not, and there's not going to be a wrong rule. The rule, as it is written, as it is published, is already correct by default because it's right there in front of me in the game. No matter what sort of ridiculousness that rule creates, the way that it is worded, that's it. It's in there. And if the company that publishes the game says, whoops, crap, we were wrong, it's fine to correct that. But that correction, in my view, doesn't have authority, even though it's from the publisher. Now, if somebody who is running the game wants to apply it, they can do that. But if somebody is running the game and they want to run it correctly, they also can interpret not to use that document because the document doesn't have any bearing. It wasn't included in the box. This may seem like an absolutely absurd viewpoint to take, but not taking it, to me, means that you expect corrections to the thing that you spent money on to be developed ahead of time. And that should not be the standard. That should not be normalized, in my opinion. I'm not speaking out against the possibility of an FAQ or errata with these comments, by the way. I'm more speaking to the validity of running a game as it is printed versus needing to incorporate the errata and calling that the end-all, be-all, true, correct way. Disagreements are fine with that, though. And it all stems from, I don't think you have a responsibility to go find the answer. If it's vague and you're lost and you want to keep playing and you want to appease people who would like that answer, even if you pull it from an external source, then yes, absolutely do it. Do it as much as you want to, but it's not your responsibility to do that. You shouldn't have to. Okay, moving on to the next one. Thank you very much for your answer. Rob Mounder says, combining all rules from all official expansions and errata into a single rulebook would be great. Thank you for your comment. Luca Rocks 7866 says, yes, I've made a FAQ for my group incorporating our homebrew rules and a bunch of official errata and general gameplay info. There's so many options now, I forget what's what. Thank you for your comment. Ike D5402 says, the most annoying thing to me about errata is not being able to get an updated official printing of a rulebook. I hate having to reconcile myself. That is 100% what I am talking about. You don't have to do that because you already have the rulebook. Granted, somebody's going to come along and say, well, if you truly believe that, Ash, then everywhere it says critical in your Elden Ring game means critical. And since it doesn't mean critical, you can't make those things do a critical. That would be very obtuse logic. It would be technically correct, but we can work around that. We can work around the obtuseness by recognizing the game exists to have fun. Yes, even the rules lawyers are there to have fun. That prevails over everything. Thank you for your answer, Ike, and not question. Karthaw says, I'd say we need both. An errata is the least a publisher has to provide if there are blatant errors in its products or if things need to be changed in light of newer editions and such. Not all buyers know about the community or would look for something fan-made. Heck, there even was an official HeroQuest errata for the 89 game system that's still lingering around in the web. Can somebody point me in the direction of that? I would love to see that. FAQ are more of a customer service, but they are essential in clearing all questions that are asked over and over again. It's a place you can direct people to and search for answers. It's even better for the community because fans don't have to answer the same questions again and again. I can't count the number of posts of Facebook or Reddit or even Discord where people ask the same stuff over and over again. Okay, yes, people also become more and more lazy and often just post their question instead of searching for an answer in older posts or threads. And yes, HeroQuest is a game that embraces its own vagueness, but that's something many people out there don't know. They expect a game with rules giving them answers. There's nothing wrong with saying, find your own way of ruling things. It is your game. But I know a lot of people who'd say they paid hard cash for a working game and won't invest their time in searching for answers they expect to be given to them in the first place. This is a totally valid take. I want to comment on the second paragraph. People becoming more and more lazy and often just posting their questions. So that'll still happen, right? With an FAQ, it's just that if anybody wants to take the brunt of responsibility and help that person, now they can just give them a link to the FAQ. It's not that much more administrative effort than just posting the answer, but at least if somebody posts an answer that runs counter to what the FAQ says, it's correctable. It's objectively not the correct answer. And somebody can come along and be like, no, the answer is actually over here. It's in the FAQ. Guys, both of you now need education. HeroQuest is a game that embraces its own vagueness. I would say that your expectations of something before you buy it and whether or not the thing meets your expectations are kind of a combination of your own problem and what the game advertises itself to be. And I do think that there are a lot of people who wrongly attribute it's your table, your Zargon, do what you want, to also meaning the rules aren't clear enough, therefore, as Zargon, do what you want. Pull an answer out of your butt if you want to. But I don't think that these things at all are the same thing. So my opinion, my perspective, my viewpoint on all of this, all together, errata, FAQ, everything, is strongly that we already have what we need, but it's a partial solution because it's in a very specific place and it's not generally accessible everywhere. So my suggestion to make this a non-issue would be to place this everywhere. And I don't think that it would necessarily solve that people are still going to have questions. They're still going to say, but how did the designers intend for this to be played? And what's your official ruling? I get that. And as much as I know people would love to see that stuff, and I'm certainly not going to fight the existence of that stuff, I don't think it's needed personally. And I actually wouldn't want it to exist. I wouldn't want the administrative effort to go towards the production of that document. But here's what I would suggest you do if you have questions about the game now. And here's what I would suggest that I think would require the least amount of administrative effort so that a lot of this can be at least pushed down. And I know that there are people who explicitly disagree with this viewpoint, and that's fine. You are completely, totally allowed to do so. I've got my opinion. You've got yours. Mine is strongly rooted in the fact that there is a clause that was published in the Mage of the Mirror and Frozen Horror expansions way back in 94. So they were probably being written maybe in early 94, maybe late 93. And they are worded a little bit differently, but they came back in the contemporary remaster publications. So they stuck. And they say explicitly in the Frozen Horror version, Zargon, study this book carefully. Although it is your guide to running these adventures, it may not answer every question you have during play. When in doubt, use your experience and imagination to make the best choice. Remember that you are the ultimate authority in your HeroQuest world. The Mage of the Mirror says the exact same thing word for word, except instead of saying, although it is your guide, it says, while it is your guide. Find me somebody who's going to be like, well, actually, that does imply something very different. I'll hear you out. I'll hear you out if you want to make that case. I'll listen. I think that those clauses answer everything that you could want, and I think that they should be published in the rule books that come with the core game system. I think that that is what is sorely needed more than anything, because it answers the question of vagueness. I do think that there are subsets of people who are like, no, I want exact answers. I want the answer that the employee gave during an interview at the convention to be canon and actually rules as written. And for a lot of people, that is the answer, but that's no way to get an answer at all. an answer like that would have no authority at my table. But I do understand I need more than that. I don't want any vagueness or ambiguities or anything. To those people, I would say this is the game, though. It has been for decades. Meditate on the paragraphs in these 2 expansions. Now, they're just in these 2 expansions. So if you really want to get into the nitty-gritty, you can say, well, Ash, you can only interpret Frozen Horror and Mage of the Mirror. The other expansions, they're not meant to be interpreted. And I get, that's why I say it's a partial solution. I would say that is a great canonical, at least to those 2 expansions, phrase to apply to anything else to basically create your answer. But anyway, I do think that there is a subset of people for whom it is a very, very big pill to swallow, that their strict interpretation and how they play a given card or quest note is different than somebody else's, and yet they both could be correct. The ambiguities that are in the game provide for different interpretations. And of course, you can say that there are interpretations that are incorrect, just as you can say there are interpretations of rules that are not vague at all that are incorrect. But I believe for these situations where there is ambiguity, there is not necessarily one correct answer. There are, because of the way that the rule or phrase or whatever is worded, multiple correct answers. And the selection between the different interpretations is Zargon's responsibility. Select the one that's going to work the best at your table. And I don't think that there's actually anything wrong or broken with that idea. I don't think necessarily that, again, that's how it was designed. But I think that was kind of the intended response when people were saying, hey, this has issues. The response in at least the US expansions, which are now the global expansions, was, hey, it's your call, you're Zargon. And I think that is the spirit of the game entombed. I think that is HeroQuest rules as written. And I say, you're Zargon, you're the ultimate authority. That doesn't mean if you want to play a rules as written game to just make up whatever you want. You could do that, of course, because you can introduce homebrew at any point and have a fun game with the people at your table. HeroQuest has the framework for that. The developers and designers and owners encourage it. It's what it's all about. But if you want to play a rules as written strict game, you have multiple interpretations that are all correct, and it's just your responsibility to choose one. And yes, if you are a Zargon that insists that your interpretation is correct, and then you go sit as a hero at somebody else's table and they've chosen a different interpretation, it doesn't mean they're wrong. It just means that you have different interpretations. Big pill. I know, it's a big pill. It's not Maladum. It's not going to be Alter Quest, Dungeon Saga. If you want to play those games, you could play those games. But I think that this is the essence of this game. Again, I'm not saying that there shouldn't be an FAQ. If the publishers of the game feel that there needs to be one and they want to go off of the feedback of people, I can't really see a con other than I think that there would be some friction because there will be people who undoubtedly would feel vindicated. Perhaps the community response to something would be not how they've played it for a long time. And this could be a whole group of people. And there's even a chance it could be the majority of people who just didn't speak up or make the way that they were homebrewing that rule, that interpretation rather, not homebrew, clear. And so if Avalon Hill goes the path of least resistance and publishes the most popular interpretations of rules to be rules as written and canonical and clarified as, yes, all helmets are made of rubber and all swords are glue, and if you hit a helmet, it sticks to you, all of that is fine. But people are still going to ask, and there are still going to be situations where people are like, but on page 14 of Death of Zarbog, famous quest written by Steve Jackson back in 1974. No, not the UK Steve Jackson. No, not the American Steve Jackson either. I'm talking about the Croatian Steve Jackson. It's implied that all helmets are stone because if you try to hit them with the glue sword, it just slides right off, and some of the residual. I think that there's going to be. I can't give you a good example. I'm sorry. I have to give you a stupid example. But I do think that there would be situations where that sort of thing becomes prevalent. And then you've got all this administrative effort that goes into something, and then people react to it. And then what do? Put more administrative effort into it? I don't know, man. I don't think I would do that. I don't think I would want to go through all the red tape to do something that's going to be half-arsed. And I think that if I wanted to do it perfectly, it would take a lot more red tape to make sure that I got everybody's interpretations in one place. Then you also have to deal with two people battling it out, saying, no, my interpretation is obviously the correct one, and that's the one that needs to be published. It's more accessible. It makes sense. And then you've got the other person saying, well, that's my line. That's what I was going to say. Everything that I just said makes sense and is the correct way, obviously. What do you do when you've got two of those people and they both look at you and you've designed the game, or you're at least publishing it? You say, what do you think you should do? Obviously, you're already doing it. Why would I tell you you're wrong? Why would I tell either of you that you're wrong? Never mind that third guy who is seething at this point saying, how do you two get this rule, which is so clear, so wrong? I'm playing it this way. Anyway, guys, that is the gist of today's BWODECast. Rules, it's part of the whole game. It's part of all the whole games everywhere. But I don't think that this game is broken by any sense, any means whatsoever. I just think that it has a lot of fun features and you can wade through them a little bit. I think once we get to the point in time where the developers were finally like, let's just make sure that they know it's their call at their table. Read the rules as written, and if they are interpretable, then they are correct as such at your table. But never mind what I think. I'm just one guy. What do you think? You can repeat if you commented here why I'm wrong or what you persist is correct in the comments below. Not going to get any argument from me. You're going to get hearts unless you're a total D-bag about it, and then you'll just get a downvote. You'll just get a dislike. You'll get a broken heart. I will see you all, brave heroes, in the next exciting episode. Hopefully it is exciting for you. And I hope that you've warmed up enough to get back out there and do some real adventuring. So until then, onward for now.